Hello and welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is the episode number 103 for Friday, June 23rd, 2023. So it's an Open Lines Friday. This is an event we do every Friday this hour, and it's a community gathering where we get together, talk about low code in general, Plant an App in specific, but it's open to anyone. We post all these editions out on YouTube after they're over, and so you can see them on youtube.com/plantanapp, and do subscribe and hit the alarm bell so you're notified when we have new content. We run the same agenda every week. We do introductions and first call, these different things around the campfire as they come up. And then quite often, an hour into it, we'll turn off the recording, go into our Afterglow segment, raise a virtual beverage, and say hello to each other. So do engage with us, jump in, show and tell, bring something to show. You can use the chat, but primarily please engage. We have very few rules, but the one is if you've got noise going on behind you, please mute. Otherwise, just be nice. You can submit questions and topics in advance with this link or others that are in our email, or you can just shoot me an email, which is the method we've got going on today. So with that, good morning. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm broadcasting from the Austin area today. I'm just down and doing some visiting. So same background, but a little bit maybe different sound. I don't know. Anyway, so we'll start. First call. What's on your mind? Who's got something going on? Right. Let's see. Chainsaws behind Don. So John is going to be muted. Okay. So nobody with first call. We'll go to the first submitted item, and this is a possible ghost story, a possible bug. And Jim, I didn't try to load the workflow that you provided, so maybe you can just tell the story.
So I am working on a new application, and it's moving a lot of JSON back and forth between systems. And the workflow I sent you, I kept getting in the middle of like 4 layers of parsing of JSON to get down to the level I wanted, that it couldn't find a list that was being created by the JSON parsing. And because it was so deep in there, I kept going, there had to be a scoping issue and things like that, so I spent about half of my day yesterday. It seems, after talking to Patrick on another ghost story, sort of just me not being able to type properly in office hours, of adjusting the scoping and the different loops of parsing and things like that, and then beating my head. And the final thing it turned out to be is that while tokens are not case sensitive, a list name is. And if you have a list that doesn't have the same casing when you create it in a parse tokens, then when you go to loop through that list, it doesn't find it. And that was the workflow that I simplified and sent you a sample of. So.
Okay. I would agree that we're supposed to be case insensitive. So, and that may, you've got this, you mentioned it as a possible 1.25, 105 bug. So do you feel like this was something that might have been different and we introduced something?
No, I don't know. That's where I'm seeing it. I haven't tried to duplicate it in another version. But I'm working on the most current, and that the sample I sent you, the workflow I sent you is one that I duplicated it using the users table. And so you should be able to import that.
For some reason, I thought it was referencing an entity. There's some GUIDs in there that I thought maybe I wouldn't. If I only had the workflow, I thought maybe I couldn't have used it.
Now I created a new workflow to reading out of the duplicate, showed the problem using a user table entry. But my tip to the group here is, is a list names, and when you from the JSON, create list from JSON. That the name I put in there, I had one letter that was not capitalized the same way, and I went to then loop through that list. I couldn't find it.
So Patrick, do you have it, and anybody else have experience with this particular one?
I can't be absolutely certain, but I have a vague memory of dealing with a list and realizing that, oh, I need to match the case, but I'm not certain about that. And I have an idea that maybe it's always been like that. I don't think that generally I would have experienced it myself, because I almost always copy and paste. When I create the list name, I copy it and then I paste it when I use it.
Yep.
Or the output token, I guess, is a better term to use in this case.
Well, if it's a clue, the error that would come up was that it couldn't find an entity. So I don't know if it's a piece of old code, that's been there since it said entity and not list in the error message.
So I was going to do something else with JSON here. So I think I have a little bit of JSON available, which I'm just going to snag.
And it doesn't, I don't think the JSON part of it has to do with the list names in particular, because I think my sample workflow that I sent, and that's just how I encountered it, but I ran it off the user table and it just did a select on the user table when I tried to use different names.
All right, so actually I'm going to give up on what I started on here because I have a great example all teed up. So let's see if we can show it and then break it. Almost, I think it was 3 weeks ago, and this was in response to a question from Don, that we had a question about how to illustrate, how to convert XML into JSON. And I had that in my private testing lab, and I created this as an entry into the Campfire so that it would be publicly available. So, or at least within this group. And so this is the entry. And so what it starts with some XML, which I've formatted here just so that we can see it. It's, there's a transaction response and a bunch of T-info content in this XML. So the submit button parses the XML into JSON, and then it loops through it after it turns it into a list. So as it loops through it, it's just creating, in this case, a very simple on-screen token that is showing the tran ID and the customer ID in a reformatted way with a little bit of HTML. It's got a break between each line. So the point is the thing works, and so let's test out list case sensitivity. So the submit button does it parses and it creates tokens, but here's where we create a list from the JSON, and then we execute actions for each list entry. The name of the list is JSON. And so if we were to change this to a different case, in theory, it'll break it. Now, I'm not on the same version that Jim reports, so it's possible that even still it won't break it, but we can at least test it. So we have to submit to get our JSON and try to parse it. And yep, no entity with name JSON. So this is a great bug, and we will report it. We should be case insensitive across the board, and lists are not case insensitive. Good find. Sorry you spent your half a day on that.
Yeah, well, luckily the gray hair, just kept pulling out more and more gray hair, so now I look a little better.
I'm going to put my example back to working correctly.
Thanks for bringing that to the group. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
And Patrick's comment is right where I live, that I copy and paste almost exclusively because, and it's not for the case sensitivity, it's just just in a matter of convenience, and especially after someone on this group showed me the Windows clipboard, I can copy everything and have it available as I move down the stack.
And I do that a lot also. And the funny part of that is that yesterday on a call with Patrick during office hours, I was having a problem with exporting and importing of objects when I had to move them lower in the list. And because of that, it didn't work, so I had to recreate it. So I recreated it on the fly, and that was my problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kind of speaking about our aspirations, we are going towards doing better testing for tokens, and in our automation and APIs area, in our new interfaces, that we're testing. I don't know if this version is doing it, so I could be showing you something that doesn't exist here, but it is in 125. I should go to a 125 test. But the idea is that when you create a token, it knows about that, and then when you try to consume it at a later spot in the dialogue, it's going to suggest it for you automatically, and so a little bit of autocorrect, or what is it, IntelliSense type thing, and it would suggest the right case automatically too. So it would have helped steer you away from that, but
I think we
see if that was in. Sir,
was that just me, or did others just lose Dale there for a minute?
Yeah, we lost him.
Okay, we lost you for a minute there, Dale.
am I? Yep, I see. It says my internet is unstable. It's not just me that's unstable; it's the internet. see to demonstrate where we're trying to go. Where IntelliSense / autocorrect, that as we try and type the name of a token, the fact that I've created it above and with a particular case, it's now trying to suggest it to me and I can click on it. So we're trying to go towards where that particular thing wouldn't have offended anyway, but it is a bug and we'll put it on the list to get fixed. I suspect it's a very easy one. Again, sorry you went through that. So what else?
And we are just now seeing your the example you were showing us too. It was behind your voice, but I think we're all caught up now.
Oh, I'm gonna have to quit showing stuff. Okay, I had a prepared topic, and it might apply to some of you on this call. Anybody using custom validators in action forms or forms? Buddy, okay. So custom validators give you the ability in forms to be able to say, to validate things in a particular way. So this is how we get phone numbers and validated, or social security numbers or things like that. And you can add custom validations in a number of ways. They can be JavaScript, they can be SQL. But at version 125, and this is in our documentation, do you see my documentation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do.
Good. So in our release notes for 125, and this was one that I just updated this week, we found that our custom validator files need to be converted because they were in an XML format. There's a special file and a special folder. We've shown it before on some video we've put out on YouTube, probably a cafe, but I'm not sure. But these the custom validator files were XML. We've converted them to JSON because that's more our standard now. And so with that, if you use custom validators and have them done in Excel, you need to convert them to JSON. And it's not hard. It's just something that you need to know about doing if you're converting at 125. So again, as always, the release notes are very important. But in our documentation, we've got a video on how to do that, a step-by-step procedure, and what they should look like at the end. And so this is an example of a custom validator that does, its name is visible name, phone is 1+ either 7 or 10 digits. And there's the type string is something that you have to, it's kind of a very specific. If you're doing a regex validator, this is the string that you would use. It has to have an internal name, so this one's called phone 710. But then the validator is this nice regex expression and an error message that comes up. So this custom validator can be added to the folder mentioned here, data and sharp action form config validators, and it will make that validation available to you to select for any field within forms. So this just goes through the procedure of explaining how to convert it from XML to JSON. And so we renamed some things in addition to changing its format from XML. So type becomes typester, and params become validator params. JS validator becomes JS validator name. So in all of this, it's a very simple edit that you can do and store. Just change the name of the file to JSON and it will work. At least it will work when you get it right. I managed to not get it right on my instance when I did the edits. I didn't have them. It is an array of things, and I didn't have it in an array. And so if you put a bad file into this folder, a poorly defined validator, it can blow up forms until all of your forms until you fix it. It really doesn't forms doesn't behave well if the validators file is malformed. So that's another that was my ghost story from yesterday, finding how I had done it wrong and fixing it. So questions about custom validators, what you might do with them, or why we're changing to JSON, anything?
Hi Dale, Jerry here. Not so much a question. I couldn't unclick my mute fast enough. I use custom validators very much so. I'm very fluent at them, and so that you have my full attention. Before I go to 1.25, I've got a little work to do. So is it going to? I heard you say it's not going to be too terribly painful, but definitely. What is it? A 1.25 version? That's when it's going to kick over and be a breaking change.
Yeah,
Did I hear you right on that?
it is, and it's unfortunately not a clean. It's actually one of the hot fixes within 125. So, but when you get there, there's an easy solution. As you're going to 125, I would recommend converting them from XML to JSON. And you can do it in advance, right? These files can live in this folder as both XML and JSON, and while you're at 124 or 125, it will pay attention to the XML version when you get this particular hotfix that does it. And I need to make a note and detail exactly which hotfix it is, so that we don't. So that it's clear, but then it'll flip over to using the JSON. It'll be looking for JSON, and it'll use those.
So if I understand you right, the my custom validators are in their own file. They're obviously not commingled with Plant and Apps validators, and so I could go into my file and actually have two versions. I could have a JSON version and a XML version in that same file, and it would know which one to parse and which one to not.
In the same folder.
Same folder. Okay, got it.
Yeah, copy the XML to JSON and make your changes, and it'll pay attention to one or the other when the version shift happens.
Understood.
And and then that's just certainly one. I know that when you upgrade, you're very careful to do it on a clone and test and all, and so that you're going to want to test to make sure your JSON ones are going on. So I did a video, and it's linked here in the documentation, and so you can watch my 7-minute video that shows this process. We found a publicly available tool that converts XML to JSON, so it does half the work for you. But the danger is that if you have, the easy part is if you have multiple validators in one file, it'll do it right. If you have one validator in the file, that free formatter tool does it differently. It doesn't create an array, and it does keep the validation level within the file. So you don't end up with a file that looks like this. So just, I mean, at the end of the day, that was where I spent my half a day yesterday, is realizing that if there's only one validator, that our instructions don't work really well. So the totality of what's here on this page will get you converted. Have I confused you, or is that right?
No, I'm all good. Thank you for that information. Just good. I'm noting, in my notes, when I go to 125, on this big conversion that we're just about to pull the trigger on. I have it noted that this is going to have to happen first. So I may sit on 1.24 for a few minutes while I rethink this.
Yep, and then just test them. And the like I say, the worst case is that if you have a malformed JSON file, it can make it. You'll know it because every one of your forms will not load because it's upset that it can't read the validators.
Mhm.
It's an amazing product that that you can extend it in that way, but if you make use of it, you have to do it right. All right, we're on to somebody else. I think we've gone through all my topics. Okay, well, after
Somebody must have something.
Great. I'll throw out a discussion topic. Anybody taking advantage of any artificial intelligence, either as part of our product or in general, to help them along in their development efforts?
I have been using it since we had a campfire a few weeks ago to generate little pieces of script and code like JavaScript or Razor script and stuff like that. I found that quite handy.
Nice.
Yes, I've been doing the same as well. It extends my abilities. If I don't know how to do something, there's Chat GPT is there to help fill in the gaps and get me over the hurdle. That's very nice.
I think what you just said is certainly where I live, that extending my abilities, I understand the concept of regex, but I haven't invested in it. So to be able to get help with that is amazing. Ben, you had your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to reiterate what everyone else said. I was just using it today, as a matter of fact, because I'm trying to write a Razor script that scrapes data off of a website, but the website is a search site, and I can't put the information directly in the URL. It's something where I guess they use session tokens or whatever, so I can't just jump to the results page. I have to go to the initial page. I have to fill in the form. I have to hit submit, and then that page gives me a list, and then I have to select an item out of that list and go to a third page. So I'm trying to do everything programmatically, and I hadn't the first clue how to really do that cleanly in a Razor script, and it pointed me in the right direction.
Nice. And that's the thing, you understand exactly where you want to go. You understand why it's an issue, but how long do you want, is it worth it to invest your time to do all those things? And this helps make the answer be yes. So,
It is the saw stopped, so I'll jump in here. It's become my new search engine, frankly. The gazillion of answers that are usually peppered with advertising stuff that comes up in the first entries in Google. I just avoid those. I ask, you have to really know how to ask questions, and I can understand now that is the latest job skill, is to be a prompter. But I do that, and then when it gives me the answers, I ask for where it got some of the specifics, so that I'm guarding. I don't trust it. I don't want it to hallucinate at me. So I do double check, and then I can go to those sources directly, which basically bypasses the pain of going through many links on Google, on typical Google search. But then I also put SQL requests and get some fancy SQL. I mean, it's not Ben fancy SQL, but it's good SQL. Then it's JavaScript as well, like Jim said, and a couple of other pieces. I did some really fancy buttons that wanted to be translucent with several layers of translucence. And if you hover over them, pieces change, and just didn't really feel like trying to figure it all out with the CSS. So I asked it, got it, dropped it in, looked great.
So I think you brought up a really good point about really a technique. Being able to ask for the source, I had not considered that, and that's, I think, a useful bit of sharing.
Certainly great.
Another thing that that I've done is use when I wasn't getting the answer that I wanted, I asked for a meaning. It was close, but it wasn't catching my nuance. And so at some point I asked, and let me give an example. When you're trying to parse video transcripts and it comes with a bunch of timings, right? We post Campfire. We see all the different topics that were talked about, when they were talked about, and we try to have nice links in YouTube so that you can click it and get there. And I noticed that it was doing a great job pulling all the topics out, but it wasn't, some of the timings were not right. You're clicking on, you've got it posted to YouTube, you click the link, it's got the right topic, but you get to that spot in the video and we're talking about something completely different. So evidently it was not evaluating my instructions correctly. So when I asked it about that, it said, well, I also asked, so how can I improve my instructions to you so that you'll get the right answer next time? And it told me, well, tell me to double check it. I don't understand why I needed to tell it to double check it, but that's fine. And then I get a better answer. So it kind of looping a little bit in there to say, how can I do this better next time? If you're doing something that's repeatable, that's another technique. Cool.
That's another good tip there, Dale.
Yep. And then again, I'm trying to do things that are repeatable. So I have a spreadsheet full of instructions for whatever it is that I'm working on. So as I develop instructions, I can circle back and not starting over every day. So I have some for how do I report a bug, like this is the one that I'm going to run through when I'm going to process what we talked about a little while ago with the list entries, case sensitivity. I'll point that segment of the video to this set of instructions and get it to produce all the things that I need to write up a ticket for our developer crew versus I have separate instructions on how to do YouTube. And so just keeping up with those and finding things that finding instructions that make the output better and then continually refining. So I agree with Don's point. It's all about becoming better at prompting the AI to do a better job for you.
Now, those instructions that you put in, I haven't pulled the trigger on doing the paid chat GPT yet. So is that, I don't see where you would paste those kind of instructions, or is that just in the question that you formulated?
So within the paid version, the paid version is intended towards getting you to do it. Is to help you as you develop these things, and you're going to do them by API. So there is a playground. Let me get signed in, of course. So within the paid version, you have access to a playground, and so there's instructions here and prompts here. So when I refer to that, this is where I'm placing them, the instructions, and then I place the transcript if that's what I'm dealing with here. Within our product, which is the most important thing, you should buy our product and use Plantanet for this. And actually, I'm going to jump to another spot.
Well, that's loading up. I thought that the engine was the same in GPT and GPT-4, and it's the data that's different. But do you know that that's not the case?
I believe
I know
it's
the
not.
interface is different, but the I think you can type in everything that you would put to the left here of, you know, where it says you are a helpful assistant. You can put all of that into the question. You can build a large scenario question and shoot it all at one time. This here is just basically split, so it helps differentiate the you know, giving the algorithm some background and then asking the question. You could throw it all into the question itself.
Yes, I find that same thing, although there are some things where it is really helpful to split them. So like if you have something that you're repeating and having your thinking of your instructions as the program and this is the data, to me it helps divide it. Yes, in most cases the engine will process them similarly, but there's other cases like I'm using it for voice transcription, and so very specifically the stuff that's in the message is differentiated from the instructions, and then these, I'm not sure, you made reference to other the different models, and I certainly find a difference in the abilities of the models to process your instructions. That GPT-4 comes closer to understanding what it is that you want. At least it seems to be easier to describe to me. I can get it to do what I want versus you run the same query through other levels and GPT-3 and it will misunderstand or not give as quality an answer. So it's pretty
Oh, okay, good to know.
From a program standpoint, so I've done the same thing. This is one that I use all the time to deal with Teams meetings and my instructions. You know, we have people that there's some mispronunciation of people's names, so they don't get transcribed correctly, and so we get them to get created. But I want minutes and action items and decisions as my product. And so I'm giving it these instructions completely separate from the transcript. So again, going back to the most important thing is buying our OpenAI actions. The action does split out those areas. So when we get into processing, I'm using just one action, summarize the content. We have the content of the thing, and it's separate from the instructions that we give to it. Ben, a question.
Sorry, I had to find the unmute button. Yes, just something different than what you were referring to. For those that have any experience with Razor script, I'm curious, is there a way? I usually write in the VB language, that's just what I prefer, but is there any way to do an imports command at like the top of the Razor code? Because like, for example, if there's something that's in the Microsoft system dot something namespace, every time I use that particular method, I have to write the whole fully qualified name out. is there any way to do an import so you can just put it at the top like you do in regular VB code and then just use the method?
I believe so. Let's look at Campfire. So
It's
you're
gotta
saying
go
different from using.
before the code start with an at.
So this, yeah. Let's see this one. So this is using, I'm not sure that this is, I don't know if this is the equivalent of include or not.
Yeah, I believe using is the C# version of imports. I'm just gonna try it now and see what happens. Yes, that was it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Great.
I didn't know you could put anything before that. Well, in VB, you have to do at code is like the beginning, where in C# it's at curly brace.
Mhm.
I didn't think you could put anything before that. I thought it had to be the first line. So at least now I know. Well, actually, okay, while I'm at it, one other question. Is it possible to, in one Razor script, define a function or a sub, a method that can get called within the script? Or is it like the whole entire script is considered like one subroutine and that's it? You can't define other routines.
And the answer is I don't know.
Silence. I mean, the
Not sure
reason
about
I'm
that.
asking is because like there are certain situations where like let's say there's a section of code that has to run on several areas of a script. Right now, I have to basically copy and paste that same exact block of code in multiple areas, even though it's the same code. And then of course, if I have to update it, I have to now update it in multiple sections in that script. Whereas if I was able to create a function within the script, I could just call the function as the script is running. If that makes sense.
According to ChatGPT, yes.
Do you have the
It's
answer?
called an add functions definition.
An add functions definition, I don't know what that is.
Me either. I mean, it's just could be hallucination on the part of the ChatGPT. But
So it looks like there might be a variation of, let us know what you find.
So it
You
looks like
wanna
it might
see
be
this.
it might be similar to like the at imports. It has to go before maybe the at code, kind of like a prototyping.
Looks like.
that's how it came in my example. It was outside the actual block of, then down. Did you get the same response as I did, Dale? Pretty close.
Okay, so now on the same lines with regards to Razor, because that's where my head is at right now, I have one final question. I noticed there's an action to run a Razor script that you can put in action stacks, but
Mhm.
the only language available is C#. Is there a reason for that? When in my tokens, you can do C# and VB? Like right now, I really don't use the action stack version because of the fact that it's C# and my preference is VB language. I'm not as quick to write C# code.
So I'm going to guess that the designer of this action has a preference for, or that there wasn't a. I'm a VB guy also, Ben, and
So the person who wrote this was biased? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that may be their approach to the world, and if it wasn't specified, do anything, then they would just start with C#. But there could be a reason that it's also that way. I mean, what do I know? But I'm guessing there seems to be a bias.
Well, if it's at all possible to extend this to do the same thing that my tokens does, which is select the language, whether it be C# or VB, it would be very much appreciated, because it would open up a whole nother level of customization that right now, while I have access to it, it's just not my preference.
I will take an action item to have our execute Razor action to ask the question whether we can expand that to VB in addition to C#.
Much
Anybody
appreciated.
notice that I'm talking to the AI right now?
Yep.
Good question. Stuff we didn't even realize was not there. Cool. What else? All right. Good questions, good discussion. We've made it almost 50 minutes, so I think it's a good spot. We can, I'll give you a chance one last time, and then we'll call it here and move into our afterglow segment. All right, happy low coding, and we will see you next week for another episode of Low Code Campfire.